From Mortal Kombat on the original Nintendo to Donkey Kong wearing a hat in the Game Boy Advance, we show 10 of some of the weirdest bootleg video games around. I'm Gurgak, and okay, let's just get started. Number 10, Darkseid on the NES. Darkseid was a pretty dark point-and-click horror game for the PC back in 1992. It is regarded as one of the scariest games of all time, and even some publishers have rated it scarier than other well-known classics like Clock Tower and System Shock 2. While Darkseid first came out, the NES was hitting the end of its lifespan, so I can sort of see where the company Union Bond was coming from when porting this over. There's not that many horror games on the NES. I mean, they are there, but not as many as you'd think. The game looks pretty bad, but for a port from the PC to NES, I'd say it's pretty decent. There's obviously going to be some cut content here and there, but all in all, I'd say it's not too bad. I mean, for a bootleg point-and-click port of a horror-themed game on NES. Number 9, Fatal Fantasy VII on the PS1. The Neo Rose was a developmental kit for people to use to make games for the system. In Europe, there is even a few magazines that will showcase these fan-made games in a little disc for your system. Two games really stood out for all the developmental titles that were publicly available: Terra Incognita and Fatal Fantasy VII, which were both made by the same people, Fatalsoft. And for the probably very small team that made this game, they did an amazing job duplicating the controls and look of Final Fantasy VII. Although the experience is short and Cloud sort of, looks kind of... It was impressive enough for Square Enix to give the developer of the game, Mitsuru Kamiyama, a chance, and ultimately gave us releases such as Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, so hey, good job, I guess, I don't know. Number 8, Rockman X for the NES and Game Boy. With only having Mega Man as a box art and the title screen blatantly taken from the first Mega Man game, nothing else really has any inkling of him being in this title. Speculation that the game was originally called Thunder Blastman, the developer Sachin probably thought that having Rockman, Mega Man's name in Japan, was a good way to get more sales, which it did. This is one of the more well-known bootleg games out there, and that's probably the main reason. The game itself is pretty below average, with janky controls and horrible music. Rockman X is also one of the top redistributed bootleg games with varying box arts accompanying it. Some just stolen right from official artwork, to others being something a 5-year-old probably drew up on MS Paint in 1995. Number 7, Super Mario Special 3 and Pokemon Diamond on the Game Boy Color. Made by Yang in the mid to late 90s, were well known for their Game Boy Color bootlegs. Somehow they captured what not to do in making a Mario game. With controls rivaling bad fan-made titles and only having 5 levels, this is by far one of the worst Game Boy games out there. You have a little map where you can move freely around to decide where to go, and while yes, there is a Hammer Brother there's no way to interact with him. If by chance you could handle the really bad controls, then more than likely the music would be what would finally seal the deal in not playing the game. Later down the line, another version of Super Mario Special 3 came out called Pokemon Diamond. And instead of starting off on a world map or anything, you are thrown into level 4 with no way of getting certain power-ups. It made it virtually unbeatable without the help of cheats. And even later down the line, another version of Pokemon Diamond came out, which fixed these issues, but was still just the same as Super Mario Special 3. Number 6, Mortal Kombat 2 on the NES. Made by Hummer Team in some unknown dates. Weirdly enough, even though the name is Mortal Kombat 2, it is actually a port of the original Mortal Kombat. While you can't select any character that was in the original, even the bosses like Goro and Shang Tsung, you can outperform most specials such as Sub-Zero's ice move, and even some like Scorpion Spear is now just a fireball. Freaking the main selling point of Mortal Kombat, the fatalities are now gone, and so is even the blood. Control wise, no NES game really could make it work out with these types of games. Even licensed ones like TMNT Tournament Fighter pales in comparison to its SNES counterparts. So in some ways, I think you could give Mortal Kombat 2 some slack. It still controls 10 times worse than any other fighting game on the system. Only thing faithful in this port was the backgrounds, which looks very good for the limitations of the system. And finally, no bootleg gets complete without some misspelling, such as difficulty being changed to difficulty, and Shang Tsung now being renamed to Skang Tsung. Ah, jeez. Number 5, Donkey Kong 2 on the Game Boy Advanced. Not to be mistaken for Donkey Kong Country 2 on the same system, this was made by Syntax. The game uses the same music and controls as other bootleg Game Boy Advance games by the company, such as Fighter Sonic. Donkey Kong is now wearing some sort of hats, and most if not all of the enemies are taken from other games. With god-awful controls and music clipping from using the one move that you have, which is throwing barrels, this is a horrible game. Weirdly enough, the copyright protection on these bootlegs made by Syntax are so hard to crack that nobody can actually emulate these games, but instead must be played on actual hardware. It's strange how these games are one of the few that cannot be emulated compared to the literal thousands the Game Boy Advance had. Number 4. Ben 10 on the Sega Genesis. Made in 2012 by an unknown Russian company, this is the newest game on the list. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up with very repetitive controls, music, and stages. Luckily, it's fairly short and can be beaten in about 20 minutes. You play as Ben Tennyson, obviously, and beat the same enemies over and over again along 4 stages, with some music being ripped straight from other games. Like on level 2, you can hear the moon theme from DuckTales on the NES. It's choppy and unresponsive, with some hits taking well over half a second to register. When you finally get a game over, you can see a bloody Ben 10 asking you if you would like to continue. This was sort of like a signature for this unknown Russian company. Other titles they made like Super Mario 3: A Space Odyssey and Felix the Cat also had really off game over screens. Honestly, this whole company should be put at the number 4 spot. Can I change that? Number 3. Chrono Trigger on the NES. Made by Shenzhen Nanjing Technology Company a little after 1996. Instead of the title screen and the first bit of music, everything in the game besides a few scenes here and there are completely different. You fight what seems to be normal enemies at first, but slowly degrades into fighting Pokemon like Beedrill and Rhyhorn. With being a port, some scenes really do try and capture what the SNES version had to offer, but ultimately half the time you're going to wonder what in the world is happening. The music is it's fine for the first few minutes, but like with most bootleg games, it's repetitive and will make you want to turn off your TV's volume after a few minutes. Even for an experienced RPG player, the enemies are relentless, with some even being able to take half your health in one hit, which is just not fun. Did I mention there's Pokemon in this game? Yeah, there's a lot of them. It's almost like a breath of fresh air when you see an enemy from the actual Chrono Trigger game come up, just for the fact that you finally get something new besides obvious rips from Pokemon games, and even some weird fusions of some. Number 2. Pokemon 2 on the Sega Genesis. Made by Humbersoft, you control a nasty 3D model of Pikachu in a Pac-Man-esque type of game. The gameplay being so slow, it almost feels broken, and weirdly enough, the music is ripped straight from Cool Spot of all games. Whenever Pikachu gets a game over, you hear almost like a Jamaican man grunting and have to start all the way from the beginning. No, I'm not even kidding about the Jamaican thing. This game was also re-released as Harry Potter on the Sega Genesis as well. It's literally the same game, just with Harry Potter instead of Pikachu. If you could find a link between these two franchises, please let me know, cause I have no clue. Number 1. World Heroes 2 on the NES. Made in 1994 by Konisoft, World Heroes 2 is a fighting game, not based off the SNES game of the same name. You have a nice selection of characters from Fatal Fury, Street Fighter, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Dragon Ball Z, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Super Mario? Jesus, what a roster. For a bootleg game, it actually controls pretty well, considering the system that it's on. Each stage has ripped music from other games, but at least it's from the franchises I said above. Every character does feel a little alike, but each one has their own special moves that suit them pretty well. I mean, sometimes. There's still some weird choices like Sonic with his electric attack. World Heroes 2 is kinda weird. On the box art, it shows Mario as the main villain of the game, but instead he's just a playable character like everyone else. Compared to other fighting games on the NES, this one in my opinion reigns as one of the top games, even if it's just strange with everything it has to offer. Have any ideas for a top 10 list? Let us know in the comment section down below, and we might actually do it. That's exciting, right? Yeah, I mean maybe. I don't know if that's actually exciting. Okay, bye.